What we've shown again and again and again with each progress of technology is that people are seeking that human connection. There's a risk in being too tech oriented right now. So you can't bring AI's law in person. I cannot close $20,000, $40,000, $100,000 of business with people in front of me that are speaking like AI. We're living in the next gen of event tech. Like we're literally shaping what the new billion-dollar companies are going to look like in the events industry.
I am just so excited for today's conversation. Julius Solaris is one of the most trusted voices in the events industry, hands down. He was the founder and editor-in-chief of EventMB, which is a media company that really revolutionized how to do content in the event industry, how to influence trends. And he built an audience of millions of readers before the acquisition by Skift in 2019. And during the virtual event tech boom of the early 2020s, Julius served in executive leadership roles both at Swapcard and then together with me at Hopin, which was really exciting. And we had the opportunity to work really, really closely together with that business. And about 4 years ago, almost to the day when we're recording this, Julius founded his current venture, BoldPush, which is a vertical agency helping corporate teams and associations with their event strategy and working with some of the leading companies in the world. So I'm so excited to welcome to the Brand Humanity Show my friend, Julius Solaris. How are you?
Thank you for having me, AK. I'm so excited for this. Congratulations for Golden Hour. And, I've been a long-time fan since I met you at Hopin. And I've been a follower right after that for the past few years. And I'm so excited about this. I mean, it's not new anymore, but relatively new venture and how it's going. I'm so glad to be with your audience of CMOs. We love you, CMOs.
Thank you. They love you. I think one of the things that, the admiration is mutual because I've learned so much from you over the years. Originally as a follower, then turned kind of teammate, and now I have pleasure calling you a friend. And it's feels like just such an important time for events. And I think that's been said for some time, but I think certainly now, because all over the internet, when I am scrolling, I'm hearing these random phrases like 2026 is the year of offline, or it feels like the word analog is back. And I want to dive into all of this with you in our conversation. But before we do, I noticed that you actually had a comment recently that on LinkedIn or a post that the event industry, we've always been a bit defensive rather than confident, that we have to be back, that it has to be now the year of analog, and that face-to-face is making this comeback, like versus sort of claiming just how important this has been and always been. And so I'm curious, why do you think that is, that we're always kind of operating our back foot a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, since I joined the conversation about the events industry, which is I'm going to date myself, 2007. So, with the early days of Twitter, I remember the conversation was, well, if we start using Twitter for our events, then people are not going to attend our events in person because they will just witness it online. And eventually what happened was the opposite. The more people follow an event on Instagram or TikTok or Twitter, X, whatever, the more they feel FOMO and the more they want to be involved with the event. And then as we saw it again during the pandemic, where the conversation was virtual is going to replace face-to-face, right? And then what we've seen in the past 5 years has been literally every year after year since 2022, I would say, record-breaking year. Again and again and again, 4 years in a row, never seen anything like that in the events industry. The biggest acquisitions, events being started, like we know, Possible, for example, started in 2 years and sold for many millions of dollars to big companies, events being acquired. So we've seen one of the biggest phases of growth we've ever seen in the events industry. And so I was thinking whenever now we're having a conversation about AI, I see one of the biggest CEOs, this is how it started, I couldn't say that on LinkedIn because I'm controversial, but not, I don't want to sue. From the CEO of like one of the biggest owner event operator that was saying AI, listen, AI is not going to replace face to face. I'm like, why are we even having that conversation?
Mm.
What we're seeing right now is probably going to be yet another sort of push for IRL, offline, whatever we want to call it. We've been calling it events for forever. If we want to call it IRL right now, we want to call it offline because it feels now we're in a vibe type of thing. Fair. I mean, we're still going to call them events and how we like to call them. And so, yeah, I feel that, we don't need to be defensive. What we've shown again and again and again with each progress of technology is that people are seeking that human connection beyond technology. So I feel we're like in a great position now to exploit that.
Yes, to grow into that potential, and I think that's absolutely right. And I can't help but uh, go back to the 2021 experience, if I can, just in the sense that the events themselves and our hypothesis for where the formats were headed and so much else was so much different than it is today. And I know you spoke recently at South by Southwest talking about just your vision for kind of where we are today from an events perspective, experiences, and kind of where it's heading next. Ground us in the reality for this conversation of where are we today? What is the reality of the events industry?
Absolutely. Well, there's like an absolute conversation in terms of channels and where events are in regards to other channels. And I feel that that's also like part of the post we were talking about earlier. I feel that where we are today, we're in a position of advantage compared to other
Mm.
channels like SEO, for example, where, oh my God, like I wouldn't even think where I would be if I were in SEO. Like I see letters of desperations online. And so I feel like events are very well positioned. Then intrinsically, once we start looking within the events industry, it is one of the most challenging times ever, right?
Mm.
I would have thought that with whatever we're experiencing right now, we would have like cut the industry by half already 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago. But again and again, we come back, and it seems like the push, the need, and the drive from people to attend events is like stronger than ever. And contextualizing this, if you take 2008, 2009, the mortgage crisis, that crisis, events were the first to be cut, no
Mm.
question about it. Right now, we're facing one of the worst inflationary environments, again, sustained for years, for 3 years, which means very high cost if you're running an event. If you're running an event in Vegas, it's just,
Mm.
crazy the prices that we're seeing. Then, like geopolitical turmoil, which don't help. Whenever travel is not working, events are not working. So if you compare that, especially Middle East, a lot of companies are being hit, event organizer right now, super hard. Despite all of this, events still seems to thrive, and so that's a very new sort of, because all of our new kind of setting, because whatever we were used to, all of these elements that I just listed in the past, they would have crushed us, and they're not. And so that means that the need is there, but we got to be smart. We got to be smart, nimble, and flexible on how we're thinking about our events, for sure.
Yes, yes, so fascinating. And I think that you mentioned this idea of the channels, the channel mix, and sort of how SEO, AEO, somebody would name your favorite three acronyms. Like there's a lot of automation coming there. There's a lot of things that's making it, not quite as future proof, let's say, of a channel for the marketing team. Events have always been part of the playbook. It's always been like a channel, but I think the prevailing belief, despite these headwinds you've referenced around macroeconomic kind of things that we're navigating, there's just so much AI slop on the internet. There's digital overload. There's crisis. Even you open your feeds, even knowing like what's real anymore. And I think the idea that the happening in sort of the go-to-market leadership kind of part of the organization is that events are going to go from being a channel to the channel for a lot of these companies. And a few are coming to mind that literally their whole marketing team is literally just an events team that's continually kind of executing and producing events. Curious, what's your take on how maybe budgets and programs are going to start to shift here for CMOs or folks kind of at the helm of these brands.
Yeah, and I feel that a lot of people discover the power of events within the CMO community during the pandemic. I think that the pandemic was instrumental to where we are today. This is not a history lesson, but we have to remember that a lot of people like started to discover the power of live and the impact that it was having on a bottom line, even running virtual events. People are saying all of a sudden, well, where we have people live, we're seeing a different dynamic. Something different is happening than just a programmatic ad on Facebook or like some SEO text that we're doing. That trend has been exacerbated over the past few years. Now we're in a position where not only like the AI is lop, not only like all of the content marketing essentially gone overnight. I'm a content creator. It's so difficult to capture attention right now because of the AI's law. Also on social media, the polarization, whatever, like the feeling that it's too much to deal with whatever is happening on social and online in general because of the algorithm pushing people against each other. Now we feel that the restoration for consumers and for businesses, it's at events for businesses because we cut through the noise. You can't bring AI's law in person. I mean, you could, but like it's gonna show so much, right? That you're speaking like AI, and it's gonna feel so immediately cringe and awkward in a second that you're just gonna waste money and time. Or as a business, you're gonna recognize that probably these people are not real. I cannot close $20,000, $40,000, $100,000 of business with people in front of me that are speaking like AI. So you immediately, like, even if the product sounds great, maybe you're getting the feeling that their product is not so great. And so those subtle marketing push, those perception changing can happen online. The difference right now is that we can scale it. We have the tools finally to do a lot of stuff that used to be expensive or, to be honest, impossible even 6 years ago.
Ooh, I want to dig into that too, but but I do want to. I don't want to miss this idea that this sort of like humanness it becomes a premium in this new world where yes, there's a lot that we can deploy AI to do repetitive tasks for event planning. And then I do want to dig into how doing things that previously were impossible, but the it's very hard to fake genuine human connection once we actually get into a room together. And that, I think even Sam Altman and Elon and others have said that sort of becomes sort of a premium in this new world. There was an example of this you referenced that I thought was really good from Coachella. Sorry, I got that wrong. That Pinterest. There's a Pinterest activation where they literally banned phones, creating almost this kind of forced sense of presence for people that came into the activation they had planned for the festival. Tell me more about that, but also like what's that psychology there? Do you think for the event marketer that does something so counterintuitive for driving awareness or creating the FOMO and so on?
So there's like some actual data that we can reference to that sparked this revolution of the past 5 years or so. And there's like more subtle sort of movements of like more psychological. So if we look at the data, what happened in the past 5 years has been revolutionary for events. Why? First off, the refresh in the attendance population. Now the biggest attendee populations are Gen Z and millennials, right? So that is more than half of the overall attendances by these two generations. And they consume events in a completely different manner. Whatever used to work 2019, 2020, not anymore. And so they want to experience things differently. At BoldPush, we carried the research with Gen Z. We got 500 Gen Z that attend events to actually tell us how they look at events. And you'll be amazed. They're the protagonists of these changes. They're asking for these changes because they react in a different way. Like if you look at shorter attention spans, for example, that are pervasive and like shorter sessions, more like immersive, but also like a little bit more meaningful. So all of these changes are driven by them. And some of them are more subtle and counterintuitive, sort of more a fake environment online. You want something that is real. You want a moment of real
Mm.
connection. And, to part ways with your phone is probably going to be very tough for the first 5 seconds, but then you're actually going to start enjoying. You take any
Yeah.
sort of any kind of child like in the 10 to 14 years old type of range. You take their phone away, they're going to complain for the first few hours. Then they're going to actually start enjoying things like nothing has ever happened. And so that
Yeah.
is very natural and human. We still have that. And I feel events have that opportunity, because if you start being too techy, too online, too app driven, too let's scroll this and touch on that and do all of those things that we do online, then it's kind of online, and we
Yeah.
don't want online. And so there's a risk in being too tech oriented right now, especially software, not
Yeah.
play with tech. I feel like whatever it's playful, you can touch and demo. We're seeing things that we want to touch at all these events, and people are like all over it. Whenever they have these like kind of like videos or even like immersive screens, people are like, yeah, but whatever. I mean, I can see this at home. So
Right.
it's changing a lot.
It's funny you mentioned the generational divide there. Like I'd read something about how like flip phones were coming back for the Gen Z era or
Go
Gen Z
figure.
kind of. Yeah, exactly. There's almost this like protagonist, as you mentioned, this like um, deep desire for to be the anti-online uh, generation or class, and so I think there's something kind of compelling there. It's just so counterintuitive to how my brain is wired as a marketer. By the way, as a human, I love it. Don't get me wrong, but as someone who's thinking about, how am I going to be measured from this, $1 million or whatever we spent for this activation? One of the things, the second order effect of how many people were there was, or how many people did we reach online? Like, what was the buzz? Like, how can we kind of quantify reach or engagement? And so I'm curious if you had any advice for marketers who are thinking about optimizing for that human experience by trading off this sort of like quantifiable ROI that they otherwise could get.
I mean, look at what happened with the Pinterest activation. We're talking about it online. Everybody's been talking about it on LinkedIn. So they won across the board. It's not like they're like denying the impact of online. They're getting there by changing the rules of the game, by being more intentional, and by focusing on the impact of things. This is very important, because like getting a lead, getting someone to click on an ad, getting Clay to do all of the outreach for you and send a million emails to your ICPs and get you 50 leads, that's within the reach of everybody right now. To actually make an impact with marketing, with a message, with a brand sort of immersion type of activity, well, that is going to be, the real objective that you have for your event, and something that eventually people are going to take away with them. And so I love what the strategy behind Pinterest move, because it's so more it's well thought out, and it's more than just like an Instagram photo op type of thing, which by the way still works. It's not like that, these things. I've seen people taking pictures of themselves literally next to everything at events, like even the most absurd things. I'm like, why are you even taking a picture of this? So they'll still need that, but I think now it's getting a little bit more sophisticated, and we need to be like, I can't wait for all those creatives that spend the Mad Men era on print and then to TV and then to the internet. I want them to come offline, because I want to see what happens next.
So good. So good. Yeah. It's an exciting time, in fact, like, right. For those of us that are excited and energized by more of the Mad Men era creative type execution. So, obviously that's been a mantra that has not been well adopted in the B2B world. And so, typically if we were to think about the B2B kind of portfolio of events from an external perspective, the formats would fall under, maybe like we're going to do a field marketing dinner, a sales dinner, maybe we'll do our own conference that, or a forum for executives that's more high touch, or we might attend an exhibit in like a third party trade show or kind of industry event. And then internally, there's things like the sales kickoffs. We have our offsites. And my sense is that pretty soon we're going to start to see these formats change as marketers become more event led, learning from the Pinterests at Coachella, learning from the Mad Men era inspiration that we can bring into the business context. Are you seeing the formats evolve as you're interacting with clients, especially in B2B? I'm curious, but even generally, are we going beyond just the traditional basket of events? And is the market or is the audience kind of pulling us into different sorts of formats for events?
Oh my God. Yeah. First off, this is a great question that I never get asked. And it's a great way to think about it because, we've been at the sort of on the early days of event led, whatever. I mean, I think it
Yeah,
started with the online event led, then transitioned to in person. But now, I mean, I could also make differences in terms of like dinner led. Some companies are just doing that, right? So it's
really.
like your whole GTM motion revolves around dinners and road shows going around the country or multiple countries, staying close to the clients with small groups of like 10, 15 people, or having those dinners around like larger events, like the side events revolution that we're seeing in the past 2, 3 years, how every large event is becoming an ecosystem of micro events happening inside and outside of the event, even within convention centers. You have those micro events, and then outside with dinners, activations, whatever you name it. South by Southwest has been at the forefront of this, but now we're seeing this phenomenon going outside, even in the different verticals and in sort of traditional industries that are not used to that, like even events, right? If you take IMEX, for example, which is our sort of event of reference that we attended in person together in 2021,
Yeah.
you saw that event. It was like pretty much the show floor. Now there's a ton happening all around, like the
Wow.
dinners, the activations, the speakers brought just to run events so outside. So this is to say that we're seeing even within user conferences now that teams like have all like this is not, as you said, one of those channels is just the channel. So the attention is going there, and where whatever where sort of attention goes, the energy starts to flow, and we start getting like all of that creative juices trying to push the boundaries. And what happens with events is that as soon as someone sees someone doing something, everyone else starts doing it. It's
Starts
like
jumping on
so
it.
immediate, so viral. Whenever I put on a deck, reporting from inbound and I break it down, I see that all of a sudden in the next 6 months, everybody's doing that same thing that I spotted first at that event. And
Yes.
so not because of me, but like there's a
Yeah.
multiplying effect that we see. So I can see things changing because like, again, events are also transient. They're very in the now. And so whatever is the best practice, it cannot last for more than a year and a half. So AIs never catch up with that. Like
Yeah.
there's no that's the biggest use case for me in terms of events against AI. AI will never be able to observe what is happening real time, analyze that, and say, okay, this is having an impact with the audiences. Therefore, we need to start doing this. That is
Right.
like such a subjective way of looking at things that just good events have, that they're like seeing, they take brain dates. Brain dates is like an example of that. The ability to connect one to one or one to many in a groups of interest based on content without being in the breakouts or workshops, and so facilitated through apps. I mean, this pre-pandemic used to be occasional. Now every single user conference has that, which is crazy
Really.
to me how that's spreading out. Canva Create is just the last one that had it.
Interesting. Yeah, people have a desire to go to events to meet other people that are going through something they're going through or want to grow their career. So that makes a lot of sense. I the last event I did, at least at scale, was 2024. And we experimented quite a bit with format. And to be honest, I haven't lifted my head, but to the point that you made earlier, I'm curious now if there are other folks that have picked up on some of the nuances of what we try to do with like a in-person experience that was limited in terms of the number of people that were there, but then broadcasting this like virtual version to the world, trying to create FOMO. Um, anyway, long story short, the way we drove people to that event in 2024 was so much different than the way we drove people to the Pulse conference in the 2010s that we had done. There were nuances to kind of when people signed up for the event. It felt like a lot of it was later, and I learned a lot of this from you, by the way. In terms of convincing folks to pull out their credit card and purchase. Like the idea of like early bird didn't quite work anymore. At least that the tricks that we had in our sleeve on the event marketing side. We saw that the people that did sign up showed up. like at a higher clip than they had previously. Maybe it was more of a considered decision to actually pull the trigger, but once they did, they were bought in. But also that people didn't really want to travel for content anymore. To your point, I know I can get it online. Like I'm not going to get on a plane to, so it felt like things like the brain dates and building connection and advancing my career, like those, and being part of an experience, like kind of having a shared moment. There were so many other kind of things back in 2024. So here we are now 2 years later. And so I'm curious, if you could share what is changing now in terms of why people want to attend events, how we can drive them there, and any other tips that an event team could listen to as they're kind of executing their own event now.
Oh dear, it's. I would say that
for a whole podcast episode in and of itself.
If your head was hurting in 2024, I think it would hurt even more right now because it's like changed again, and it's like in the space of a couple of years and a half, everything changes again. It's great. This is also part of the fact that a lot of people are trying and testing whatever is happening with AI, getting input and trying it, failing in a lot of cases, with it. So things are changing pretty fast. But like a lot of the thesis, a lot of what I was surfacing as trends back then at 2024, I've been able to test with research. So a lot of these hypotheses, we've been able to actually have informed data, plus all of the work that I've done consulting-wise with a lot of these brands. I've looked at thousands of feedback forms and like the impact of what we do. And so I have a pretty clear idea on what's going on. And I feel that, so whatever was super late in terms of registration, it's even later. I've seen some 75% of capacity sold 2 weeks out. I mean, crazy.
That's so
right?
stressful.
But like this is not for like 400 people. This is for 5,000 people, right?
Oh my
so
gosh.
From an operations perspective, it's a nightmare because you have to commit, you have room blocks in some cases and all of that good stuff. So operationally, that is requiring to rediscuss completely your venue sourcing, your negotiation, however, your contracts and all of that. So very practical things here. Then I think whatever is also changing. My prediction is that sort of late registration is actually going to be a little bit slower going forward. Why? I'm looking at this. I'm tracking this right now. I just posted it today on LinkedIn. The impact of GLP-1s on 25 million Americans, and the fact is reducing compulsion and impulse buy. So that used to be a biggest bulk of the late the registration trend, saying, whatever, I'm going to register. That type of decision is being completely obliterated by these meds. And there's 25 million people with that taking those meds right now. And we're seeing the impact. Many brands are reporting on that. And my assumption is that it's going to have an impact in the next year or so as it becomes more available. And so what does it mean? You have to rethink your core touch points. Early birds, they're still a core touch points. Whenever you announce your registration, very important. Your agenda announcement, your content announcement, very important. But then you have to work on two things, I feel right now. Your value proposition, why should I care? And that has to do with the content versus connection. I've been able to test that now over 4 independent pieces of research. And it's changed. Whenever I ask them what is driving registration right now, everybody says connection over content. And that's intuitive. But think about that we're seeking connection also with content. So content is becoming part of the connection, especially for what is happening around AI. We want to learn about AI together in person with other people. So it's not just random meetings or one-to-one meetings. It's also okay, get us together in a room to learn about something. That is how content is serving the connection element. It's becoming so important now. And then the other one, I feel the work you need to do with your alumni, whoever showed up at your previous events. And that is something that we haven't done notoriously in the industry for many years. We've kind of concentrated on launching the registration and thinking about acquisition, new contacts. Yeah, we'll send an email to these people. Most of the strategies I work on with my clients right now are geared towards alumni. making them feel special, getting them to act on our behalf as ambassadors, and like literally leveraging your community and bringing it to life.
Mm. Which makes so much sense. It was, I don't know if I'm allowed to share this fact or not, but it's been a few years, so maybe
Oh,
it's
come
okay.
on, some
But
breaking news. Please go
no,
for it.
no one's gonna care about this news, but because it's so old. But I remember doing Gainsight's conference for 7 or so years. And I'm talking the order of magnitude of 6,000 people at Moscone Center in San Francisco. Every year, just about every year, we had to win back our audience. Like the recurring rate of folks who renewed and came back year after year was a lot less than we had thought. So it wasn't that we had our 3,000 attendees in year, let's say one, and then of the 3,000, 1,500 came back in year two. We started from a higher clip. No, we had to like constantly re-win the audience. And so, and again, it's been a generation since now, but alumni activation is incredibly smart and well worth the effort. It 10 years ago it was so hard to do it. And so interesting to see how this is now becoming more and more of a primary kind of means of hitting numbers. And it makes so much sense. If you create a good experience, people are going to want to tell their friends or others. I think what was happening for us was that in the B2B context, companies on a unique account basis were still buying the same tickets, but they're passing the registrations along. So Jane and Bob got to go last year. So now David and Sam get to go this year or something to that end. And so there was a bit of that is how we sort of interpret it. But gosh, if somebody could build that flywheel or help figure out how to repeat attendance, it'd be
But here we go. Like this is probably the biggest change that we have compared to your, obviously Paul's times at Gainsight. I feel that what we have right now is the ability to draw 4,000 rows Excel spreadsheet in AI and literally find out immediately what is happening with these people, what was their NPS score, what did they
Yes.
complain about, and why are we not turning them? And so we like to do something like that back in the days for a user conference that was already a monumental implementation for the books for everybody. The people still remember that era of polls, so you already did something incredible. But to dedicate a data analyst to dig deeper at that level with feedback forms and so forth, it's not going to be worth it. You're not going to have the capacity and resources and the speed to do something like that.
Yeah.
Right now it's possible, and we are seeing. And also think about the fact that there's too many events going on. So acquiring new attendees is going to be incredibly more difficult, especially for the up and coming events. If you run sort of a mid-size event, what is a mid-size event? An event that is not like too big enough to be like the event of the industry, an event that is not like a dinner or like an intimate event. So
Right.
anything in between, it's really tough to build momentum if you don't really focus on the core of those people and you turn them into your community of engagement. I foresee and predict a lot of struggle for anybody that is like really not at the top right now or is trying to get at the top. It's really difficult to acquire new attendees.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. What a unbelievable use case there though for AI. And you're right. Like going back to your earlier comment, something that would have been impossible kind of back in the day, even for the data analyst, candidly, depending on how plugged in they are, but incredible. What for the folks maybe that are the challenger brand events kind of coming into an industry, do you see that there's maybe some new models that are evolving to help them kind of get a foot in the door, whether it's, historically, I think you wrote about this not too long ago, that we're almost like moving away from this like all-inclusive multi-day kind of conference model. Like maybe there's shorter attendance windows that people will want to attend for a bigger event, or maybe even shorter kind of formats, smaller formats for industry events.
No, I feel that if you're the big show of relevance right now for an industry like the one that people are looking at, you have to start diversifying if you want to keep on growing, right? You have to start introducing day tickets or like interest-driven type of tickets, which could be connection only or party only or expo
Okay.
only type of tickets, because that's the only way you're gonna sort of attract though that audience is kind of a defense to like it feels like too much of a commitment to get there for like 3 days. The locals, right? The locals are so important right now for
Yeah.
many events, as they are in Vegas right now, where we're
Yeah.
seeing consumer traffic going down. We're being bombarded as locals. I live locally in Vegas to like join casinos. They become or California for Vegas so important, and so I feel that you have to find your California or locals if you operate in New York or in Los Angeles or San Francisco or even Vegas, right? Honestly, we see very little done in that sense. Then, if you're like a contender, you're an up and coming, like how do you build traction, right? How do you interpret all of this? I feel that having a roadshow dinner driven, micro event driven at these events is very important. And also like building the presence, at the big shows. I feel that a lot of CMOs are making the mistake of seeing traction in the dinners and seeing like some good pipeline coming out of it, which is great. But let's not forget that having a booth at CES for a tech company, it's a huge brand statement. It's probably the biggest statement you're going to make for your industry. And so you have the CES of every single industry, and you still have to be there. Otherwise, honestly, you don't really exist. I mean, you do exist to a stage where you're offering a free dinner, and everybody wants a free dinner. Having a free coffee espresso bar at a booth, that's not a strategy. Everybody wants free. So that's not going to be a problem with like getting some traction there. But then you have to start asking yourself like the tough questions, as in, what are we doing as a brand? How do we build our brand through events? And I feel like that having
Yeah.
a small to big type of strategy now can pay off quite a lot.
So good. Yeah. And I'm thinking just a lot about how smaller teams can scale their ability to produce these types of events in a way that historically it's been like, um, and honestly, like either for the CES example you referenced or producing your own event, I imagine for a CES, there's like a barrier to entry. Like, here's what it costs to get a booth on the show floor or something. And for some brands, they could afford it. For others, it might be kind of out of reach. But for producing your own event, AI can help you punch above your weight as a operate as a event team or kind of a whoever is tasked with kind of producing this event at a company. I'm curious. Obviously, you've studied this market. I've been a consumer of your research in this space. Um, where are you seeing AI give events teams leverage for executing, and what is mostly sort of noise or overhyped, kind of in terms of AI's impact on event execution and production?
Totally. Well, I mean, on April 30th, so in 10 days time from the date of recording here,
Mm.
we're going to host what we call demo day
Oh, cool.
for the AI and events. And we have 40 companies, 39 companies demoing in 5 hour sort of pandemic style type of virtual event where we're going to have literally 39 companies demoing for like 5 minutes their product. And so, we have like, and I've had like probably as many people contacting me with new startups since we announced. So there's like, I would say 70 to 80 AI companies doing solving for events right now, which is extremely exciting. I feel like we're living like from event tech people like us, we're living in the next gen of event tech. Like we're literally shaping what the new billion-dollar companies are going to look like in the events industry. So exciting time to be an event tech right now, and with the legacy companies trying to catch up to the best of their ability. We do have like 5 or 6 legacy companies they're demoing what they're doing with AI as well because
Oh, they
they're
are at the.
reinventing the platforms as well. So there's a lot of benefit that we'll see even for the traditional user. I'm not going to name names here because I don't want to be again sued. But like for the traditional user of the tech platforms, we've seen some event tech platforms announcing MCPs, right, to connect it directly with Claude. So that is an immediate gain, right? Because you're just registering people on the page, but all of that data, good analysis piece is now native within Claude, and you can query Claude and run agents and get it done for you. And it's like so mind bending for us, who've been in the sort of previous generations, I guess, of event
Yes.
tech. So that is exciting. Then we have like the startups that are changing with small use cases. We're seeing a lot of One of the most exciting one for me is, well, first off, this is not new, but it's getting incredibly better. I feel that facial recognition right now should be the standard. That's AI, right? Facial recognition should be the standard of every registration process. Like you can literally see right now the big lines or the lack of lines at registration on whether they got facial recognition or not.
Oh wow.
Like it's just that's the decider, because like to just put your face in front of a camera and being instantly recognized, obviously if you opted in, that's incredible. I witnessed it at Dreamforce. We have 50,000 people cramming the Moscone entrance, and so we were going so fast through the registration. It was so incredible to see. So that is one. Then we're seeing the facial analysis part, which I'm excited about. So the idea of pointing a camera at an audience and see how that content that you're doing is landing, or that activation that you're doing is landing, and getting sentiment analysis based on facial
Wow.
expressions, which is pretty
Wow.
exciting.
Really?
Then we're
Super
having, these are
exciting.
like kind of legacy. Then we have like the new
Huh.
ones that are kind of like, let's record the conversation that we're having at the booth and push it directly to our CRM with lead scoring in a second
Mhm.
while we're having it. Obviously, that, for anybody that has done sales, field marketing,
Yes.
that disconnect, relying on people to fill out, those forms, or like Salesforce, it's not happening anymore. It's
It's
automated,
crazy.
right? So that is just incredible, and we're seeing so many more. Like from the overall planning, you just prompt and plan website and registration and stuff like that, to booth design and all of that, to venue sourcing. Just prompt and find the right venue for you instead of sending like RFPs and all of that. So there's a lot brewing. So very excited to see what's next.
Very exciting. Very exciting. Yeah, and it feels like it's the I don't know if you would agree, but it's extremely exciting. But it feels like it's still early in the sense that the innovation is happening now. The use cases are being sort of adopted by customers today. It feels like, for lack of a better term, it's like the gold rush. It's the new kind of era that invites participation for entrepreneurs and for others that are kind of building for this space. And so I think that's adding to the energy too, I guess, is being able to see
Yeah,
everything
and I
that's
mean
popped up.
something that you're gonna like, AK, because we've been dealing with event tech people and CEOs. There's two types of CEOs right now. From when we look at traditional event tech companies, there's the ones that immediately embraced AI, like from day one,
Yeah,
and the ones that kind of thought, when I was posting about, like, literally either like you understand this, or, and we're talking about 3 years ago, I was posting and saying what is happening right now. This is going to be seismic for event tech as we know it. That traditionally is an Excel spreadsheet on steroids. Let's
totally.
let's be honest, right? So this is going to be seismic, and so some CEOs have tried to wait and see, or thinking like this was another, I don't know, blockchain or NFT type of thing, and see, okay, we're going to wait and see if it passes by, or like build a wrapper. In the past year or so, I think everybody kind of is like equalized on the same level, and they're like, okay, we got to get on it. We're going to make it happen. That's the only thing that matters for people right now. Because let's see, another thing that we're seeing, event planners, they're vibe coding, they're building their own stuff, they're bypassing event tech altogether. They don't care. You
Wow.
see, look at the HubSpot team, what they did with Unbound, now
Unbound
called
now.
Inbound, right? So what they did was they built their own session selector based on Claude. And for the first time in my life, I was able to actually ask, I'm interested in sessions about events, and actually have a list of relevant sessions. Now
Wow.
apply that to matchmaking. I want to meet the top three people
Yeah.
here that are relevant to me. That is the question you have at events, right?
Amazing. Right.
So now we're solving for very important stuff.
Incredible. Well, just I can't thank you enough for sharing a window into your world and a window into this industry for us. Before we close out, I want to one thing that it's in the name of the show, but I think that this idea of our own humanity and how everything is moving so fast, and I think both of us were super excited about that. But for a lot of folks, it's overwhelming too. That there's so much happening. We're executing at such a high speed. There's so much unknown, that our own humanity. The risk is that our own humanity could be impacted by all of this. I was curious, what do you do to slow down intentionally to kind of tap into your own humanity, invest in yourself during such a seismic season of pace and innovation?
I'm not going to pretend I'm good at this because I'm not. I've been hustling for the past 4 years like there's no tomorrow. So I've been going like super hard. But like the only thing that is like being keeping me grounded is definitely my family, and specifically the fact that my son is a competitive swimmer. And I've seen a different facets of events, like which are sports events that I didn't know, other than like being a fan of like some teams in different sports. I seen like these humongous movements, especially in North America, of volunteer driven meets and events that happen every weekend across North America, with this participation of thousands of people that literally build all of it themselves to make these kids progress. And it's like that, I call it my first job, and this is like what we're doing here. It's my hobby, because like, being there and supporting and officiating and timing and doing all of those things that you do as a parent, but also seeing the competition of human beings, so exciting and so human to me. That brings me back. But then I'm lucky. I get to attend a lot of events and I get to connect with amazing humans like yourself.
That's awesome. Connection, family, and I can't help but think like seeing events everywhere. Everything becomes an event to some extent, isn't it? When you're studying the market and seeing it all come to life.
Totally. And a tip for your audience: if you feel like you're in the AI machine and you're like at day 6 of your Claude deep dive because you need to learn this, get out, go to an event, and like get to meet other people, learn with other people how to do Claude, find an event, find a group, whatever. Even Claude themselves, Anthropic themselves, they're doing Claude in-person classes because they understand it. AI companies are the first to do this.
Wow.
So there's a lot of opportunities to do this, and just get out of your room or your house. Now is the
Yeah,
time.
totally. Julius, thank you so much. Congrats on 4 years of Bold Push. Where can folks go to follow along, to subscribe to Bold Push?
I'm gonna say, like, find me on LinkedIn, Julius Solaris. That's my sort of starting point, home base, and then you'll find the newsletter, our premium community, my consulting, and everything else we do.
Awesome. All right, Julius, thank you again so much. And I can't wait. I'll see you at an event.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll see you in person.
All right, take care.